There was a smell in those old grocery stores that you just don't find anywhere anymore. It was a mix of fresh-cut meat from the butcher counter in the back, the waxy cardboard of cereal boxes stacked 6 feet high, and something faintly sweet near the bread aisle where the loaves were still warm from the morning delivery. You walked through those glass doors and the whole week was right there in front of you, waiting. So let me ask you this. Do you remember exactly what it felt like to push that metal cart down the aisle in 1965, knowing you had $20 in your wallet and a family of 4 waiting at home? That $20 bill was a serious piece of money in 1965. The federal minimum wage sat at $1.25 an hour. A working man bringing home a solid paycheck might clear around $90 to $100 a week after taxes, depending on his trade in his city. That means a full week of groceries for a family of 4, a real grocery run, not a quick stop, would run you somewhere between $18 and $24. Think about that for a second. Roughly a full day's work, maybe a day and a half, covered everything your family needed to eat for 7 full days. 1 hour of that man's labor bought almost 2 full pounds of ground beef. 1 hour bought 4 loaves of bread with change to spare. The numbers made sense in a way they almost never do today. We'll talk about what those same groceries cost right now a little later in this video, and I'll just let the numbers speak for themselves. Now let's walk through that store together, because the experience of grocery shopping in 1965 was its own kind of world. Picture a Tuesday morning, maybe 9 o'clock. The floors were either linoleum tile or polished wood, depending on whether you were in a big A&P or a smaller local market. The fluorescent lights hummed just slightly overhead. You grabbed your cart. It had that slightly stiff wheel that pulled to the left, and you started at the produce section near the front. A pound of bananas was about 15 cents. A head of iceberg lettuce cost a dime. Tomatoes ran about 30 cents a pound when they were in season, a little more in the winter. You didn't think about organic or non-organic. You thought about whether they looked good and whether they were priced right, and most of the time both answers were yes. You'd squeeze a few tomatoes, put the firm ones in your cart, and move on. The bread aisle was next in most stores, and this is where the real decisions happened. A standard loaf of white bread, Wonder Bread, Sunbeam, whatever your family preferred, cost about 20 cents, maybe 22 cents at a slightly more expensive store. You could buy 3 loaves and still have change from $1. The butter situation was interesting in 1965 because margarine was aggressively marketed as the modern, smarter choice, and plenty of families had made the switch. Real butter ran about 75 cents a pound. Margarine was closer to 30 cents. Your mother had an opinion about this, and so did your wife. That debate happened at the kitchen table in a million American and Canadian homes, and everybody remembers which side their family was on. If this is bringing back some real memories for you, go ahead and hit that like button right now. It really does help this channel reach more people who remember these days the same way you do. And make sure you subscribe to Memory Lane Prices so you never miss one of these trips back in time. We put one of these out every single week. The meat counter was where the real money went, and every man who ever did the grocery shopping in 1965 remembers standing in front of that glass case making careful decisions. Ground beef was running about 45 to 50 cents a pound. A whole chicken cost around 30 to 35 cents a pound, which meant a decent-sized bird ran you maybe 60 or 70 cents total. Pork chops came in around 55 cents a pound. Chuck roast for a Sunday dinner was roughly 50 cents a pound, sometimes less if the butcher was moving inventory. And here's something most people forget. The relationship with the butcher was real. He knew your name. He knew how you liked your roast trimmed. He'd tell you what was fresh and what had been sitting. That was part of the grocery experience that we simply don't have anymore, and it made a difference in what ended up on your table. Let me put one specific moment in front of you. Picture a woman named Carol. She's 32 years old. She's got 2 kids at home. Her husband works at the plant and hands her $22 every Friday morning for the week's groceries. She walks into the Kroger on a Thursday because that's when the new weekly circular kicks in and the sales reset. She's got her list written on the back of an envelope, pencil, neat handwriting. She knows the price of everything in that store within a penny or two. She picks up a 5-pound bag of sugar for 39 cents, a 10-pound bag of potatoes for 49 cents, a can of Campbell's tomato soup for a dime. She buys 2 pounds of coffee, Folgers or Maxwell House, for about $1.12 total. By the time she gets to the register, she has 17 items in that cart, and she's right at $19 and change. She counts her money before she gets to the checkout line. She always does. That's not stress, that's competence. That is a woman who knows exactly what things are worth and has built a week of real meals around that knowledge. Canned goods were a cornerstone of the 1965 pantry, and the prices reflected that. A standard 15-ounce can of green beans ran about 14 cents. Corn was about the same. A large can of Del Monte peaches was around 25 cents. A jar of Hellmann's mayonnaise cost about 45 cents. Heinz ketchup in the large bottle was about 30 cents. A box of Kellogg's Corn Flakes ran around 35 cents. These weren't luxury items, and they weren't bargain bin items either. They were the reliable middle of the American grocery cart, and they showed up on the list every single week without discussion. Dairy was its own section of the budget. Milk ran about 49 cents a half gallon in most markets, though home delivery was still common in many areas, and that cost a few cents more for the convenience. A dozen eggs cost about 53 cents. A pound of American cheese slices was around 55 cents. Sour cream, cottage cheese, a pound of cream cheese. These were the things that filled out the refrigerator and made meals feel complete. Ice cream was a special calculation. A half gallon of Neapolitan or vanilla ran about 59 cents, and most families bought it on Fridays because it felt like a reward for getting through the week. Now here is the honest part of this conversation, and it matters. Not every family had $20 free and clear for groceries each week. There were plenty of households in 1965 where $15 was the real number and sometimes 10, and every penny had to be accounted for twice. Wage gaps were real. A black family in the South or a farm worker family in California was often operating on a fraction of what a unionized factory worker in Ohio was bringing home. Women working the same jobs as men were earning significantly less. The prices were low, yes, but so were the wages for millions of Americans and Canadians who never got to feel the comfort of that era the way the history books tend to describe it. The nostalgia is real, and so were the struggles, and both things deserve to be said out loud. Now let's do the comparison, and I'm just going to lay the numbers down one at a time and let you sit with each one. In 1965, a pound of ground beef cost about 48 cents. Today, that same pound runs you between $5 and $7, depending on where you shop. A loaf of white bread was 20 cents in 1965. Today, it averages around $4. A dozen eggs cost 53 cents. Today, you're looking at $3 to $5. A 10-pound bag of potatoes was 49 cents. Today, that same bag costs $5 to $7. A half gallon of milk was 49 cents. Today, it's between $4 and $5. A can of Campbell's soup was 10 cents. Today, the same can costs around $2.20. A 5-pound bag of sugar was 39 cents. Today, you'll pay around $4 to $5. That full cart that Carol pushed to the register for $19 and change in 1965, that same cart today would cost you somewhere between $170 and $200. The numbers don't lie, and they don't need any commentary from me. Here is what that era really taught us about grocery shopping specifically. It taught an entire generation how to read value, not price. Those men and women who built their weekly grocery list on a budget of $20 weren't just shopping. They were making dozens of small, intelligent decisions every single time they walked through those doors. They knew which cuts of meat fed a family the longest. They knew when to buy canned and when to buy fresh. They knew the difference between a good price and a sale that wasn't actually a sale. That knowledge was real, and it was earned, and it stayed with people their whole lives. You still know it. You still look at a price tag differently than someone half your age does. And that is not a small thing. That is a skill that was built aisle by aisle, week by week, through years of paying attention when it actually mattered. Now I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me the one grocery item from back then whose price you still remember clear as day. Maybe it was something your mother always bought, or something you picked up yourself on your first solo grocery run. Whatever it is, I want to know, and I promise the other people watching this video want to know too. Share this one with someone who remembers standing in those aisles. It will start a conversation worth having, I guarantee it. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Genuinely. The fact that you sat with this one all the way through means a lot, and I'll see you in the next one.